Tonight on the Goblin's Corner,
Time periods.
Part 2.
That's how we roll. 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 That's how we roll.
Welcome to the Goblin's Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
We're doing time periods.
Part 2.
Indeed.
This is the second part of our time period series. And once again, we're going to give you 3 time periods that we're going to go into more depth about. Thematics, storyline, a little bit of history from
a little bit of science, a little bit of technology.
From our poorly limited knowledge. But it'll be a lot of fun so that you can throw some different time periods in your game.
Yeah.
But before we get to that,
We've got announcements.
we have some announcements.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Matt, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, this episode, when it airs, will be...
The episode is going to air in a few days.
Yes. But it will be our 1-year anniversary.
That's right. 1 year ago, roughly, we came onto the air.
Yeah.
We hit up the podcast. We started promoting about it. And since then, we've done about 64, 65 episodes so far that we've recorded.
We are taking control of the world at a continental pace.
Yes. One step at a time, by God. Inches at a time, we shall take over the world, and our media empire shall expand so that our descendants might use it.
Indeed.
For good.
One would hope.
No, they're not going to use it for good. But we are, this is our year anniversary. So happy birthday to us.
At the very least, use it for fun.
That's very true, yes. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to the Goblin's Corner. I hope you guys have enjoyed a whole year of us just blathering about. It's been a definite learning experience, I would say.
Absolutely.
Because when we started this, and we may have mentioned this on our first episode, we didn't know
Indeed.
And now we still don't know
Yes.
but we sound a lot better not knowing
Exactly.
So, thanks so much for listening to us. We're on YouTube as well now, so thanks so much for watching us. Again, Faces for Radio, hashtag Faces for Radio.
We could be doing worse.
We could, in fact. Additionally, someone has finally given me what I have craved all along, and I have to talk about our wonderful friend Jess, which, what is her Twitter name?
Stu and Marty.
Okay. So she has given us a delightful drawing of a beholder shark.
Indeed.
I've only said this for like 6 episodes now, and I've finally gotten my beholder shark. And it is the cutest beholder shark because it is not only a beholder shark, it is a hammerhead beholder shark.
Right, which neither of us even pitched.
No, it's great. So we're going to stick it up on the web for everybody, but for those of you on YouTube, observe. Look at that beauty.
Love it.
It's delightful. Isn't it cute? So thank you so much for making that.
You got to admit the timing was solid since it's our 1-year anniversary.
And
somebody made us fan art. That's
what a
super
great
dope.
present, you know? I think that's delight. So if anybody else wants to give us a beholder shark, I'd be more than happy to display it someplace in our junked up studio.
Yeah. One of the smaller, like a cookie cutter shark as a gazer or something. That would be.
Oh, that would be
cool.
nice. Yeah. Or a spectator shark, maybe like a spectator skate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a manta.
I feel like both of us are failing to mention the most appropriate shark for us. The Goblin Shark.
Oh, yes, of course. So, I don't know what to call. I don't know what to put a goblin shark in with.
Well, for us, probably a undead eye tyrant.
I could see
Goblin
that.
shark.
A goblin shark eye tyrant.
Yeah.
Like undead. Yeah, absolutely. That would be awesome. So anyhow, thank you so much for the beholder shark. We're going to put it up on the goblinscorner.com site if you want to check it out. Now, in addition to that, we do have
A question of the week.
All right. So what's the question of the week?
Well, we're doing some time periods here.
Mm-hmm.
So you're an airship pirate.
Of course I am. In my day life and in my mind.
Sure. What's your job on the ship and how are you most helpful?
If I were an airship pirate, I would most likely I'd be some kind of crazy mechanic, I'd say, or a mad scientist. Now, let's be honest. I'd be a mad scientist.
Sure.
I'd be blowing something up. I'd have a mechanistic looking right arm because for some reason, I injure myself on the right side more than my left, and it would just be completely robotic. Like,
Sure.
and it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be like Iron Man arm or what's the dude, the Winter Soldier's arm. No, it would be straight up like the skeletal mechanistics. You could see all the gears, clockwork.
More Furiosa-ish.
Oh, no, it'd be clockwork.
Yeah.
Straight up clockwork. Steam powered. There'd be like a little piece of coal that's just slowly burning and smoke's coming out of it and such.
Sure.
And my job would be to blow stuff up.
I can see that.
And that's it. I would just blow it up. What about you? What would be your job? Aside from looking jaunty in a large hat.
Clearly. So I think I'm going to do a classic bartender.
Mm-hmm.
And in classic bartender style, I'm the ship's counselor
Yes, I can see that.
and libation expert.
I see you with a jaunty curled mustache as well, waxed.
I don't know if I can pull it off.
I
but
think you could pull it off. With the hat, you'd have to.
But also, when need arises, I'm an incendiary expert.
So we'd both blow things up.
No. You'd blow things up. I would set things on fire.
Fair enough. Do you blow things up or set things on fire? Write to us, info@goblinscorner.com, or you can reach me, eric@goblinscorner.com, or...
Me, Matt at goblinscorner.com.
And of course...
But if the investigation is still ongoing, do not tell us about it.
Yeah, don't tell us about that stuff. And of course, you can find us on all of the things,
In fact,
like Discord or Twitter or some of the other social networks that we never talk to people on.
it's true.
Yeah, it's true. All right, let's get to the topic at hand, time periods part 2. So before we get to the actual time periods, which we've got 3, we're going to start with the Iron Age, but it should be noted that we should once again have some disclaimers because...
We're not historians.
Yeah, and we're a bunch of idiots. And it should be noted again that we're a bunch of idiots. If you haven't listened to this podcast, and this is your first one listening, welcome. But also, you're listening to a bunch of idiots. So the disclaimer is, this is thematics and storyline for your game.
Yes.
And we're not historians. So just note that. We're going to say some stuff that may not make any sense. It may not even match up to history because we kind of took a paltry look on a Wikipedia page to put stuff together.
The timelines are mostly correct-ish.
Yeah, that sounds about as professional as we are.
Yes.
Good. Excellent. Secondly,
This is from a Western perspective.
because we are from
Yeah.
the West.
And realistically, you say we're idiots, but the fact of the matter is we're smart enough to recognize
That we're idiots.
that we don't know enough about other perspectives
That is correct.
to provide them.
And because
and so
of
we're
that,
not going to.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
Now, if you have those perspectives and you'd like to give them to us so that we can tell the world about them, please do. We'd
Yeah.
be happy to share
If
them.
you'd love to talk about it, we'd love to have you talk about it.
If you are a historian and you'd like to be on this show and talk about time periods, come on down. Give us a call.
Yeah.
Thirdly, history is full of nasty times, nasty topics.
Humans are garbage to humans.
It's true.
And because humans are garbage to humans, you should session 0 anything
Mm-hmm.
that has to do with garbage human topics.
Not just war, but the human conditions. There's slavery. There's smuggling. There's scoundrelism. Like, I'm just beating around the bush here,
Every
but it's,
ism.
all the isms are bad because, as Matt mentioned, people are bad,
Yeah.
right? History's full of nasty stuff. Look at the Nazis. They were terrible people.
Individuals can be great, but people
Tend to suck.
are garbage.
Yeah. So if you want to incorporate some of these elements into your campaign, great. But session 0 this with your players. Some people want to take that kind of moral quandary or those very sensitive topics. Other people just want to play a game.
Right. They want their fantasy to be fantasy, damn it.
Yeah. And they just want to have fun.
Yeah.
And if it's not fun for them, don't put it in your game. Straight up.
Yeah.
So be an adult, session 0 this stuff, because let's face it, you don't want to make people uncomfortable. You don't want to do sensitive topics and people become angry and not want to play anymore. The whole purpose is to have fun.
100%.
Now, we should also mention
these are generalities,
Mm-hmm.
and you should feel free to mix and match these categories as much as you want. If you want to come across a Stone Age civilization and an airship pirate campaign, dope.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it. You want to do a different political situation in a different time period, so like a monarchy in a cyberpunk setting, or
Sure.
I'm just riffing here, like some kind of democracy in the Dark Ages. Go for it.
Yeah.
You can do that, and there are some instances of mix and matching in history as well. But again, every fantasy game contains a little bit of mix and matching. Consider this your buffet table of categories and time periods and themes.
Yeah. Take what you like
Leave the rest.
and leave the rest.
There you go. All right. Now that we've gotten our disclaimers out of the way, let us get to our first time period, which is the Iron Age. And
Yes.
what are we calling this, Matt?
The Age of Aggression or the Dark Ages.
Mm-hmm. So obviously the trope, Dark Ages, it's dark times, people are bad, lots of stuff. But there's a lot of complexity with the Dark Ages and the Age of Aggression.
Indeed.
Now, first off, it should also be noted we have a couple of categories. If you didn't listen to the last episode, we'll
fair.
just go society, technology, science, religion, art, and magic, which also includes monsters,
Indeed.
politics, and themes. There. We've gone through all of the previous stuff.
Okay. So we're in the Iron Age. Let's talk about society really quick.
Okay. What's going on with the society?
Feudalism.
Okay.
Feudalism reigns supreme in Western society at this time.
So similar to previous eras, there was a little bit of feudalism as well.
But this is where it really, really kicks in.
Consolidates.
Yes,
Sure. And again, we're talking Western society here.
correct. Yeah. Most people are peasants. Daily life generally sucks for most people.
Because you're toiling away for somebody else's benefit.
Kings rule the nobles. Nobles rule the peasants. And peasants' lives are garbage.
They
They're
ruled-
at the will.
Peasants rule the chickens.
Yes.
So we've got somewhat of an oppressive society here. Makes for a very dark game. And yet, this is a common theme, this whole nobility, peasants, feudalism in many D&D campaigns, certainly, but also in other games as well. So, for example, World of Darkness, if you go some of their Dark Ages stuff, it's
Yeah.
very similar.
So let's talk about technology.
Okay.
It's the Iron Age, and therefore clearly we've developed
Iron.
smelting and metallurgy.
So we were in the Bronze Age, which is the Age of Heroes. Now in
Sure.
the Dark Ages, the Age of Iron, we're making steel and iron and stuff like that. Iron composites,
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
We've also made some advancements in architecture. Now we've got Gothic cathedrals.
Yeah. So very, what is it? The, what are the arches?
Flying buttresses.
Flying buttresses. Thank you.
Indeed.
Yes. I was thinking of that word. We also have
I could see it.
stained glass, I believe.
Yes.
And a lot of the architecture was devoted to religious purposes, as big buildings often are.
Indeed.
But you also have castle building on a massive scale as well.
And those influence each other.
Yes. Because if you've got a large feudal population and they need protecting, a big building is the way to do it.
Indeed.
And armies.
Which is why the other technological impact was siegecraft.
Yes.
Because if somebody builds a big building, somebody else is going to want to knock it down.
Absolutely. So we talked a bit about the Bronze Age and the invention of the sword. And again, I'm sure it was invented before the Bronze Age, but now it's strictly for warfare. We have now mastered warfare because now we've made all kinds of other stuff too. We've got plate mail armor or chain mail.
And chainmail.
Yeah, all the mails, leather armor, all that other good stuff. And now we've got siegecraft stuff. So ballistas and trebuchets and
Mangonels.
oh yeah.
Yeah, nothing says screw you like a 500-pound rock from 600 yards.
Mm-hmm. What's the thing with the bolos? The giant bolo.
Those were actually just launched by catapults or what have you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got
It's
those.
bolo shot.
Bolo shot. Yeah, those were cool too. Fire. They use a lot of fire because nothing says you like a big
Like burning it down.
like a burning pitch that's just launched over the castle wall. A lot of that stuff going on.
We don't plan on keeping this building. Burn it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, work for the Vikings. Let's talk a little bit about science.
So the trope is
Mm-hmm.
that everything goes backwards.
But the reality is somewhat different.
The brakes were put on a lot of the sciences,
Mhm.
and a lot of the advancements that had been made were hidden from the general populace.
Okay.
Partially because the people in power don't like peasants knowing things.
Because if they know stuff, then they can make their own decisions.
Yes.
So when you're playing this in terms of thematics, if it's a fantasy game, have it the way you want. You want to play that dark and gritty type world? Cool, go for it. You want to make the peasants educated and talk to you and be more modernistic? Cool, you can do that as well. One of the mentioned people in power, obviously, religion.
Indeed.
Now, largely regional, often violently contested,
Indeed.
crusades,
Yeah.
for example, and domineering, I would also say,
Yes.
in many ways, welded as political power.
And there you have it. That's pretty much the Dark Ages in a nutshell as far as religion is concerned.
Consolidation of political power into religion, and everything was passed on either from them or kings, which were divine right.
Exactly. The kings continued to exist at the will of the church. And to some extent, the church held on to its power at the will of the kings.
Mm-hmm.
There's politics that go into this. We are not getting into religious politics.
No.
We're leaving this exactly where it's at.
Yeah. You guys can talk about that amongst yourselves at some other point or juncture.
Feel free to look up how religion worked out in those times.
Yeah. Art. More of the same kind of art. So religious artwork predominantly. But there's like peasant craft as well. And there's art for the nobles as well. And we mentioned stained glass and Gothic cathedrals and all that stuff. But music is one that is very interesting as well.
It did kind of, in a way, flourish in this time. The rise of chamber music,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's part of where the bard comes from. The concept of the fantasy bard.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally musicians who are playing to influence the mood of the room that they're in.
Yeah, you got your troubadour playing for the king.
And you had traveling minstrels who literally went from town to town to just make people happy.
Well, you had a rebirth of oral history because people couldn't read. And because of that, got a lot of storytellers rolling around.
Indeed.
Good way to get a meal. Now, all of this is more or less based on real life history.
Yes.
Now let's talk about magic.
One thing that both of us have been continuously forgetting to mention that just occurred to me, which is the only reason I'm interrupting. Fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Fashion has, from the Bronze Age to the Dark Ages, that is a continuously evolving art form as well.
Yes.
It occurred to me, wanted to bring it up.
So we've got some courtly fashion,
Indeed.
whereas before I guess we had togas.
I mean, yeah.
You can see the extent of our historical knowledge. It's clearly evident. Now, a lot of this stuff is from real life that you can use in your campaign, but let's talk about some stuff that's not from real life, and we're going to talk about magic.
Okay.
Now, magic, again, messes with the equation of all of this stuff. So just because the peasants are being domineered by feudal lords, magic can change that, right? You got a guy who's a wizard, and the nobleman says, hey, I want you to work for me, and he shoots a fireball and incinerates the guy. Guess what? The power dynamic has changed.
Especially with things like sorcerers and warlocks. Because wizards are educational based.
Yes.
But if I'm just a super popular guy that happened to trip across some entity in the woods. Now I'm a loose cannon.
Yep. Anything could go. And then there's priests too, priestly magic as well.
Indeed.
And now, granted, we're talking more of a monotheism here because, it's, at least in Western history, is more sort of real life, except
Although, depending on
where
in
were,
Europe
that's
at
true.
the time.
Yep. But yeah, so you could play that game. So let's talk a bit about magic. So we had arcane magic, as you mentioned. Illusion is a great time to bring that stuff in. It's also a great time to bring in enchantments or magics that change form.
These are all from things like Lamort d'Arthur and what have you, right? This time period is rife with these types of magics.
Deities vie for dominance with church as pawns.
If you're looking at the way theology happened to go about during this time period, how would you put this? The magical theology of this would be that there are forces at work that are using the forces on the prime as their pieces.
Yep. Now, if your game has multiple different gods and goddesses or whatnot, then this will change the equation as well, because now you've got a lot more power dynamics moving things around on the board than just one or two. And so how you play that could be very interesting, right? Have a lot of intrigue stuff going on. And again, a lot of, I would just say, Forgotten Realms, very Iron Age in many of its aspects.
Yes.
A lot of Renaissance as well, but because obviously it's a fantasy game, so you can borrow, but
Waterdeep is more Renaissance. Cormyr is more Iron Age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Let's talk a little bit about some monsters.
All right. Fae.
Still around.
This is a big, big time for the Fae. You got your Green Knights. You've still got the old beliefs further out
on the edge of the world.
Yeah. This is a big, and you have to understand that people in civilized, quote unquote, society didn't stop believing in the Fae. They stopped talking about it in polite circles.
Sure. And we mentioned our worldview last episode. So we went from a small family unit or village to multiple villages to a country or series of countries. Now we're expanding it out to multiple different countries or geographic regions.
Yeah.
So something to think about if you're looking at the top-down view in your head. Because of that, we also have the consolidation of things, which is why the religions are consolidated or such. And I would say that this would also be the recession of the Fae.
Yes.
Because of iron.
Yes. There you go.
They're starting to fade back from the material world.
But the rise to some extent of infernal influence.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more you try to stamp down on things, the more it is human nature just, shuffles it off to the sides and the back and anywhere they can hide it.
We had legendary monsters before. Now those are starting to fade back into the background as well. Here be dragons. They might still be a couple of them, but now we're getting more in terms of, realistic monsters. So before you had like the archetypical monsters, you had the mythological monsters before that. Now you're getting more away from those legendary creatures, and it's just a werewolf or a
humanoid-based monsters.
Yes. Yeah. Monsters more like us, because now
vampires, werewolves, zombies, ghosts.
The monsters become more anthropomorphized.
Yeah. Now they're all reflections of the evil of man.
Yeah. Which is kind of fun, right? So Iron Age is straight up D&D. You can borrow a lot of elements from the Iron Age in your D&D campaign or any fantasy game if you like. It's more realistic, I would say, in terms of how you might do combat or battles, like army battles and stuff would be cool to throw around. You could go grimdark with this. Some gritty combat. That's what it's all about. Monsters are the things knights were sent to quests for. and kill.
Yeah. The questing beast is a huge theme throughout writings of that time.
Let's talk a little bit about, and it should also be noted that you could also throw in like The Witcher. So some of the elements from that series as well.
Absolutely.
And any type of fantasy. You can even go Earth Dawn if you wanted.
Yeah.
A lot of different options, right?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings is also very Iron Agey. I'm going to use that term, Iron Agey.
Iron Agey?
Iron Agey, yes.
All right.
Let's talk about politics.
Once again, feudalism. There's a lot of that running around. Kings are vying with other kings for resources and territory.
So now we start playing chess, right? Everything is moving armies one way, moving trade or supplies another way. Everybody's playing off each other. Fine time for intrigue.
Yeah, blockades.
It's a risk game.
Yes.
Chivalry also.
Yes.
And the divine right of kings, as we mentioned before. So we should note about chivalry. Big theme that we can play with.
Both the actual code of chivalry and the theoretical code that most people
the
think
romanticized
it is.
form of it, yes. Because they are not the same. Go look it
No.
up. We're not going to quote all of that. But if you want to play that kind of game, the romanticized version of chivalry, that's kind of a fun thing to play.
Yeah.
You can all, what is it? So, for example, the movie First Night.
Yeah. You got also A Knight's Tale.
Yes, and that was another one that was good too. Game of Thrones, also you can look at stuff. Although they didn't do a lot of chivalry in that, but
Not so much.
But definitely Iron Agey as well.
There were a couple people who actually kept their word.
That's true. One or two. So a lot of different themes that we can play with. Speaking of themes, what are some other themes we can mess with?
Well, since this is a time when kingdoms are vying against kingdoms, you've got invasion.
Yep.
Expansionism.
Oh, yeah.
Court intrigue.
Oh, lots of court intrigue. This is the perfect time for a thief. Crawling around in a dungeon.
Yeah, breaking into a castle.
Trying to get somebody out. Wizards flying around on brooms.
One thief is a siege breaker by by opening the drawbridge and what have
Absolutely. Crusades.
you. Sure. Courtly honor and chivalry, as we mentioned.
Romance.
Oh, yes. The token of affection, the single rose, what have you, and attaining nobility from people who are not nobles at the moment.
Which would be a great reward for adventurers as well.
Exactly. I mean, there have literally been historic times when a standard bearer simply refused to die.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, he's got a plot of land that he owns and is suddenly in control of something.
Congratulations,
and now
you're a
he's
noble.
Sir so-and-so. Exactly.
That's right. What's fun about playing the Iron Age?
If you're into Arthurian legend or anything that lends itself to that style of story, this is the time frame for you.
If you've watched anything on TV in the last 20 to 30 to 40 years that has to do with fantasy and swords, it probably has a little bit of Iron Age in it.
Probably a fair amount.
I'd say a fair amount, yes. So lots of fun, a lot of themes you can draw from, a lot of bad stuff, but also a lot of fun stuff that you can play for your game. All right, let's talk about the Renaissance period, the age of Enlightenment.
I don't figure you gotta pinky out.
Gotta hold your pinky out with that. A little jauntiness, right? Age of Enlightenment, a little bit different, right? We can still have all of the following elements that we've had in our previous eras.
Sure.
Same civilizations, but now society has progressed a little bit in terms of their viewpoints.
Yeah. And they're making, they haven't just progressed, but they're continuing to progress. That's what the Renaissance was all about.
So we've got other government forms aside from, say, feudalism or a monarchy, or just, I guess, dictatorship, really.
Yeah.
So it may have been through revolution.
Or the threat thereof.
Or not just like physical revolution, but a mental revolution, a revolution of thought.
Sure.
What else do we have in society going on?
You still have expanding nations, but now you've also got colonialism. You've gone from just trying to take over your neighbor to hopping in a ship, going a couple thousand miles, and trying to take over somebody else's neighbor.
Okay, so we are trying to acquire other nations at this point, which happened before. There's lots of nation building going on. For example, Rome.
Sure.
And even in the Dark Ages, that was happening as well. But now it's a different sort because now it's more of like naval combat and acquisition through trade sometimes and through ideas also.
Yeah.
You also have the rise of the middle class.
Indeed.
Which is definitely a new power dynamic that you can toss at players. And in general, just new ideas going on.
Yeah.
New art forms, new thought, new inventions, lots of new stuff.
And a lot of the things that were known have come out of hiding.
Yes. Let's talk a little bit about some of these new inventions that people are coming up with.
The printing press.
That was a huge one.
Johann Gutenberg, man, he got it down. And that changed the world. Let's face it. Education becomes feasible for far more people when the price of books come down. They're not hand copied by scribes or monks anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't take months to make a book. It takes like hours.
Yeah.
Well, probably a couple days.
Hours.
Hours?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. You also had newspapers and stuff like that people could read.
Yeah, but because you also had woodblock printing.
Yeah. We're going to just list a couple of these off because there's a whole bunch of stuff on here. The pendulum.
And some of these happened earlier than I was aware of when we started doing the research. The pendulum, sure. Eyeglasses.
Telescopes.
Microscopes.
Barometers.
That was one of them.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that barometers happened that early. The musket.
The thermometer.
Watches.
Oh, that's interesting. The flushing toilet. I didn't know that came out in the Renaissance.
Right.
How cool is that? Adding machines.
And that's the actual one with buttons, not just an abacus. Abacuses have been around. Abaci? Whatever. The plural.
Abaci or abacus?
Whatever the plural of abacus is.
We'll figure that out.
They've been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
Map making, obviously.
Now, there were maps before as well, but this is when it really kind of comes into its own because there's a lot of naval stuff going on. So you had the caravel, the astrolabe, the submarine.
Yes, the submarine, folks. That's amazing. The slide rule.
That no one's ever seen except mathematicians. Anybody under 30 that knows what a slide rule is, hit us up. The mechanical clock, because we had watches. Of course, the clocks exist.
Sure. Cannons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now we've got even better ways to kill each other.
Because we're moving into the most amusing time frame. The Great Pirate Wars.
Yes, piracy. Wrenches, screwdrivers.
Wallpaper.
We had wallpaper. That was when wallpaper was invented?
Sure.
Why not? You had easy ways to make paper at that point, so yeah, that makes sense.
Scales for weighing.
Mm-hmm. Parachutes.
And blood transfusion.
Yeah.
As early as the Renaissance.
Well, think about the vampire stories, right?
Sure.
So it's been around for a while. Let's talk about some of the sciences. Again, let's just do the rapid fire here. We got math, obviously, so heliocentrism as well.
Sure. Elliptical orbits.
Mm-hmm. So think Galileo, guys.
Right. Your man with the apple on his head.
Yeah.
Discovering gravity.
Mm-hmm.
Blood circulation.
Yep. So Descartes.
Right. And that only makes sense with transfusions because if you didn't know about them, you obviously couldn't perform them.
Mm-hmm. Scientific method, although they were natural philosophers, I think, back then.
Alchemy/chemistry.
Mm-hmm. So they're still trying to find the philosopher's stone, but now they're refining the process, and there's some chemistry involved in there as well.
And they recognize the use of experimentation, whether or not it leads to what they're aiming for.
Yep.
Human dissection.
Ah, yes. So studying anatomy, galaxies. Again, our boy doing the first banks.
Yep.
We also had a lot of trade stuff, right?
Indeed.
So
spice trade,
mm-hmm.
the Silk Road,
mm-hmm.
the old one, not the new one, and guilds.
Yeah. And if you guys want some interesting aspects on the sciences around this time, go read Neil Stevens' The Baroque Cycle.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff you can learn from that. I think it was after the Renaissance. It was like, I think, 1700s, 1800s? I think it was the 1700s.
It would have been 17, yeah.
But it's still definitely in the time period that we're playing with here because it's several hundred years. So think about it. Religion, more of the same.
Yeah. Slightly less of a death grip on politics.
Mm-hmm. All right. We're going to talk a little bit more about religion and the rest of the stuff, but we'll be right back.
After these messages.
This is a commercial break. If you guys would like to hear us review something like a product or service, or if you'd like us to cover something like a topic,
or if you'd like to sponsor an episode, we'd love to hear from you and have you contact us at info@goblinscorner.com.
so write to us and maybe we'll talk to you. Maybe not. And we're back.
Welcome back.
All right. So we're talking time periods part 2. We have gone from the Iron Age into the Renaissance, and we were talking a little bit about religion in the Renaissance as it being somewhat more of the same, but less of a death grip.
Little bit. Because we're still, the Spanish Inquisition exists,
Mm-hmm.
and it was terrible, and it was bloody, and it was filthy, and it existed in this time period.
So it depends on where you were as to what your thoughts were.
Very much. And also the response to the Spanish Inquisition is part of what caused this continual forward movement.
Yep. So something to think about in terms of if you're playing a game in this time period, if you're playing something gritty and real, things could be great in a city, could be go to the little backwaters or go to another country. Things could be worse, right?
Indeed.
Let's talk a little bit about art.
Perspective is starting to get really mastered. I mean, obviously perspective exists, but it's really starting to get mastered in this time period. Paint palette increases dramatically.
So we're getting into the masters now. So Leonardo da Vinci and such.
Indeed.
Which honestly is where submarine came from, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the parachute.
And the parachute, of course.
And the helicopter.
And a lot of
I could go on for quite a while.
Lots of different things with him. Portraiture is very common and popular at this point. And I would also say it's particularly good amongst not just the nobles, but the well-to-do. So the merchant class, for example.
Yes.
And royalty, of course, because royalty's still around.
Yeah. And they always want to be on a wall somewhere.
Yeah. And there's a lot of other art movements as well around this time period as well. We could get into all of that.
There are far too many for us to list here.
Yep.
I am not an art historian, but I know that there were at least like 8. It was a very busy time for art.
I have taken art history, and I'm going to tell you that it's a very large chunk of most of your art history books. So go look it up. It's really interesting stuff if you want to incorporate that into your game. Now, all of this, again, very normal.
Sure.
Or real life, I would say, not normal. So let's talk about some stuff that messes around, kind of screws up the Jenga set. Magic.
Indeed.
How can we incorporate magic into these time periods?
How to destroy the concept of a time period. Add magic.
Yeah, just add magic, guys. First off, we can talk about magic items now.
Yeah, and they're at this time period, they would be for more than just offense and defense, right? Up till this point, you're probably going to have magic armor, magic swords, maybe boots that make you faster in combat.
But now you might have magic wands or scrolls or
backpacks for carrying things.
Mass-produced magic items, potions.
Or, yeah, certainly at the low end, like potions and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Because whereas in the Iron Age, a magic item might be something that was given to you by divine right, or it might be a magic sword for slaying this fiend. Now you've got people churning out magic items.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of fantasy games are a mixture of Renaissance stuff, Iron Age stuff, and sometimes some Bronze Age stuff, right?
Sure.
Because they all kind of flow together.
And I also think at this point, right, because we're increasing education and people are really delving into the natural scientists are beginning to delve into specialties.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is also when you would clearly define the schools of arcane magic.
Okay, so the traditional D&D magic schools, for example,
Sure.
or the series,
Pathfinder or
Pathfinders, or the various schools amongst in White Wolf and on Mage, or Ars Magica, all of the different ones that they have there.
Yeah.
A lot of different options, depending upon what you're playing. And it's fun to have this definition now because at this point, as you mentioned, people are learned, at least some of them. I mean, this is the time of the bard, of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're playing with words, you're playing with thoughts and ideas. And specifically because of that, you might now have a lot of different theological arguments going on as well, because we had that in history.
Indeed. At this point in history, the arguments between the sects of a given religion are every bit as volatile as the arguments between different religions.
Yeah.
There is open bloodshed about different people's points of view of the same religion.
Fair enough. That's a good way to say it. And in your campaign, if you're playing with magic or different gods and goddesses and such, you could have a little schism going on, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm going to do the difference between 3rd and 5th edition. Lathander and
Amonitor?
Yeah, Amonitor. There you go. That's a good example right there, right?
Indeed.
You can play around with different fun concepts and ideas like that. The rise of occultism is another fun thing to play with. So Golden Dawn, guys, was started around this time.
And since we're talking about magic, we also have to talk about the other thing that can completely screw up the ecology: monsters.
Yes. Let's talk about some Renaissance-style monsters.
And once again, in things like D&D or Pathfinder, it can all fit.
It's all good. Yeah, throw everything in. But let's
if you're
talk
doing
about
something a little more related to people's beliefs into a current timeline, in a more real-world timeline, you're going to have things like inflated legends from creatures of other places.
Okay, so instead of having legendary creatures, this is legends of maybe
Real creatures.
Real creatures, right. And it could be like literally real creatures, like I saw this creature, it was a beast, it swam in the water, it had scales like a snake, it was some kind of dragon. It's an alligator, guys.
But an alligator.
And an alligator barbarian was right next to him, leaping out of the water. He drowned the paladin. I barely got away because I was a thief and I evaded very quickly. Yes. Thought I forgot about that, didn't you?
I will never think that you have forgotten about drowning the paladin.
Oh.
All right. But, okay, imagine the first Western person to lay eyes on a giraffe.
Yeah.
What's your description of that?
Oh,
You've got nothing.
That's going to be ridiculous.
It was a 30-foot tall horse, only it was slightly larger than a horse, but the neck was 20 foot long.
Mm-hmm.
It had horns.
And spots.
Yeah.
It spots.
Now, convey that to a person who is then supposed to draw it. Right? This is going to be a nightmare beastie.
Now, what's even more fun is because we're playing fantasy games, throw in some actual monsters in there.
Sure.
Now you've got like a werewolf or a zombie or what's a ridiculous animal? Any of the chimera creatures like an owl bear.
Or take that concept I just gave you and make monstrous giraffes. Make monstrous hippos.
Now that is awesome. So what you do is you go find a 4-year-old and you ask them to tell you what a hippo or any type of animal looks like. And then you get somebody to sketch that out. Get the kid to sketch that out. And you make that D&D monsters. Guys, we've just invented a new book. Congratulations. You're welcome.
Indeed.
What fun is that, right? Additionally, because of that, you have new monsters taking hold in discovered or occupied territories, right?
Yep. And still everywhere at the edge of the map, here there be monsters. Here there be dragons.
And again, our worldview is now expanded. If you're going at the 1,000-foot view, now you're looking at multiple countries. Again, it looks like a risk board, right?
Plus, you've got krakens and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a very interesting scientific theory on where the krakens came from. I'll share that with you, not in the podcast.
Okay, that sounds fun.
Because we're family friendly. So,
when we're talking about monsters, we have the recession of mythical creatures. So
yes.
they're moving away from the world now, much like the Fae moved away, much like the legendary creatures away. Now, stuff like chimeras might float away. Still can have them, but maybe they're more stories that people will use to scare others.
Makes sense.
Except for the ocean.
Which is
Always.
literally filled with monsters.
Still is.
Yes.
Still filled with horrible creatures in the modern age. Let's talk a little bit about politics.
Politics. This is where politics gets fun. If by fun, you mean filled with scheming, assassinations, alliances, betrayals, land races, just...
This is the time of high intrigue. This is when you want to play a diplomancer.
Yes. With poison use.
Bards or assassins, anybody with a face skill, a warlock with several infernal talents.
And poison.
A half fae. Any of this stuff goes. Yeah, and poison. It's always in poison. Got poison ring. Poison's really happening. Assassinations, they not just happen, but they are an art form.
Yes. And they are wealthy.
Mm-hmm. Well paid. Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Straight up. Let's talk a little bit about the merchant class now. What's going on with them? Because we have the rise of the merchant class.
And with imperialism, the merchant class is only making more money.
And they now start acquiring power that feudal lords in the previous age might have had, or even the churches.
Yes.
So we have this power of the merchant class, a naval trade route. And because there's trade routes, guys, the best time in the world is what?
Piracy.
Ah, yes. Now, if you don't know Matt and I, we love pirates.
Indeed.
We like ninjas too, but pirates.
Anybody that's watching on YouTube is clearly aware of your stance on
I
pirates.
don't know what you're talking about. I have a pirate flag directly behind me.
We need to sketch out a Jolly Roger for the goblins, like a Goblin Skull Jolly Roger.
That's going to be the next thing we ask for. We've got our Beholder Shark. Now we need a Goblin's Corner Jolly Roger.
Yeah.
I'm down
there
with
you
that.
go, folks. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Thank you for that. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some themes in the Renaissance, in the Age of Enlightenment.
Well, we know exploration.
Sure.
We touched on that, obviously, because you can't run around colonizing the world without exploring it first.
That happens.
Intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
Touched on that.
Trade.
The Age of Discovery. That's not just exploration, but also scientific discovery.
Sure. So ideas, thoughts, religions, things that shake up society.
Gunpowder.
Yeah, gunpowder does it. Multi-continental strife.
Imperialism. Colonialism.
And
all the isms.
All the isms that are terrible.
Freaking isms.
Subjugation of the masses.
Yes. And pirates.
And pirates.
So at least you've got pirates.
Yeah.
Now, to touch on pirates really quickly.
They were not as romantic as we envisioned them to be.
Yes and no.
Some of them.
But one of the things that you have to touch on is there were also letters of marque. There were pirates who were not pirates. They were, in fact, raiders for governments. They were legally sanctioned raiders.
And they were just pirates. They were employees.
Yes.
So something fun to think about. Why would you want to play a game in the Renaissance, Matt?
Pirates.
Pirates, obviously. But in addition to pirates, why would you want to play a game in the Renaissance?
Assassinations. Why wouldn't I want to play a game in the Renaissance?
There you
really?
go. Yeah. Lots of fun ideas that you could throw at characters. Lots of fun exploration opportunities. A lot of fun story arcs. It can be gritty as the Dark Ages, but with a little bit more modern flair. You've got the Magic Mart. I mean, as we mentioned before, most fantasy games have a little bit of Renaissance, a little bit of Iron Age thrown in. So this is a good time to play and borrow from these elements.
It also is a solid chance to add multiculturalism into your game, because now there are ships going from place to place and covering large distances.
A very valid point. Right. Now, you could add that in previous ages, but you may not.
Right.
And so this is a great time if you want to play different types of people from different types of places. There you go.
I saw one interesting note. I saw somebody mention the fact that in Mexico City at this time, you could have a lost Aztec princess, a Japanese samurai, a rabbi running from the Spanish Inquisition, and escaped slave from the Americas as a party of people.
That sounds like an adventuring group if there ever was one.
Right?
Yeah.
But they all existed in the same time frame in the same place, because there were samurais in Mexico City in the same time frame as the Aztecs, as the fall of the Aztec people.
That's cool. There you go, folks. That's what we're talking about here. Wonderful stuff.
Yep.
Finally, we come to our last one for the evening, the Industrial Revolution.
Or the Age of Expansionism.
Now, we did some expansionism going on in the previous couple of ages, but this is when it really kicks up a notch. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. The biggest, obviously, is because of manufacturing. And so this is a different set of themes. Again, these are all fast and loose rules.
Let's talk about society.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're moving far faster and far more towards a modern take on society.
Yes.
In the Industrial Revolution. Some of these empires are starting to fracture while they're still reaching out and trying to expand.
Mm-hmm.
The movement towards a freer populace is starting to take hold in some places more than others.
Correct.
Human rights, the ascension of the working class, the fall of monarchies.
Rich now govern the poor.
Yep. And it is just a different form of nobility, but it is a change.
And now you've got train barons. Now you've got railroads going on. You've got industry workers that are just leading hordes of people. Same type of nobility. The nobility still exists.
Yes.
But
in some places.
But in some places, it's just in name.
Yes.
Because now money talks. And that's the biggest difference. A lot of technology going on. And we're not going to label all of it. But the biggest thing, mass production.
We'll touch on just, highlights. You've got mass spinning and weaving.
Mm-hmm.
That opens up the life and free time of a great many people, because the whole textile industry, you can now clothe the world using technology. The steam engine.
Now and if you guys are playing some steampunk stuff, this is when it starts, guys. A little bit of Renaissance, a little bit of steampunk. There you have it, right? Harnessing electricity is another fun one.
Sure.
We've got the first communication devices across mass distance, the telegraph and the telephone. And
very early telephone.
Telegrams, yeah. All the tele stuff.
The internal combustion engine.
Mm-hmm. So now we're burning things for power.
Yep. Railroads and
revolvers. Yeah. Because now you got horses and you got gunslingers. Because we got Wild West at this time too, guys. Think about it.
Locomotion and six shooters. That's Wild West.
There you go. Let's talk about some science.
All right. You've got, realistically in this time frame, there's a lot going on, obviously, as you can tell by technology. But on top of the things that led to those technologies, you've got the rise of chemistry,
mm-hmm.
wherein it separates from alchemy. Right? This is true chemistry, the science, versus alchemy, the philosophy.
And we've got a lot of other science being established as well.
Yeah.
Engineering, for one.
Engineering, and the rise of your boy Freud.
Oh, yeah, psychology. Yeah, a little psychology going on as well. So a lot of interesting concepts you can throw at your players if you're playing in this time. And this takes place, what do you say, like up to the end of the 1920s is how we're doing this?
I think 1900s.
1900s? Okay.
Yes.
So there's a lot of time spanning between this. We've got everything from the end of the Renaissance to that point, right? So Civil War as well, all kinds of stuff. Let's talk about religion.
Oh, let's. This also is the time in the world where religion begins to have to the power with science.
Now now science almost becomes a religion unto its own.
And in some places, it
is.
very much did, yes.
So the idea of logic and reason now overtakes a lot of people, and it's more of, oh yeah, those were quaint old theories, but we are folk of science.
Yes. We are enlightened.
Yes, very true. So logic and reason now win the hearts and minds of others, and people try to explain everything through science or through logic specifically as well. And that's a fun concept to throw at people, especially when you've got a game with magic.
Well, not just that, but
Or
you also
eldritch horrors gripping you from beyond with skewed geometry. How do you explain it?
or just a game with humans in it. Do you know how illogical the average human is?
I'm a man of logic, but I can't understand what that Manitou is doing to that person. It turned him into a giant ant, and now I have to go find my huckster with this deck of cards so he can cast a spell. Oh, it's so illogical. We really need to play Deadlands.
I see. All right, let's hop down to art real quick.
Got Art Nouveau, Art Deco.
This is a great time for art. I love Art Nouveau.
Lots of arts going on, right? Pointillism, Romanticism. We've got a lot of resurgence. So as many different styles that we had in the Renaissance, we've got now in this industrial age as well.
All of the bad isms that we had in the last time period are replaced with better isms in this time period.
It depends on your opinion of art, really.
I like Impressionism.
Neoclassicism is good.
And like I said, I like Pointillism.
Mm-hmm. We got some early photography now, so
Yes.
playing around with that. And a lot of different types of realism or impressionism, post-impressionism, again, more isms.
Yes. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Better isms.
Different cultural art styles as well.
Yes, that's true. Because of the speed of travel, cultural art crosses far more boundaries than it used to.
And in Western society, like art from Asia is very big at this time. And also, and I found this very interesting. I didn't know about this, but naval and oceanic art, which is kind of cool.
In this time frame, like 10,000 islands were discovered and mapped and charted. So, yeah.
That's cool. Art explodes because of the Renaissance, and it just keeps going. So with all those new ideas and all of the other discoveries, you've just got people experimenting left and right with different type of stuff.
And with chemistry coming to the fore, the palettes have increased in color option drastically.
And more availability as well to paint stuff.
Because it's far cheaper to make.
Yeah, you can mass produce them now,
Yep.
which is really cool. So we've talked a little bit about art here. And in addition to that, now let's talk about what makes the world so wacky and crazy. Let's mix in some magic into the game.
Sounds great.
All right. So the first thing we have to get out of the way with magic is steampunk, baby.
Yeah,
It's steampunk.
Sure.
Why would you play an Industrial Revolution campaign? Steampunk. That's,
Eberron.
Yes. Eberron is exactly what we're talking about. All of the magic now can blend together into an amalgam of pseudoscience.
Sure.
So you've got mad scientists that can run around. By the way, this is about the same time as a Deadlands campaign, folks.
Also true.
So you can have some crazy alchemy from Deadlands. You could have some bizarre occultism or spirituality. You can have mechanistics from Wild Wild West with Will Smith.
Sure.
All that stuff.
Have you a couple of little mini Gatling guns that never run out of ammo?
I mean, whatever you... Yeah.
Until you roll poorly and go absolutely...
crazy.
Off the deep end.
Oh, yeah. Go off the rails there. I mean, sky's the limit, right? In addition to the standard magic that we've kind of codified in the Renaissance, now you've got maybe occultism.
Sure.
So you've got different types of occultism you can blend into your campaign. You also can do multicultural magic now. So it's not just specific styles, like the Hermetic styles or the different spheres. Now you can add different
Yeah,
belief
people
systems.
been running around the whole world. You got to play mix and match time now.
Absolutely. And now you can start incorporating maybe different styles of magic. So not just different ideas, but also stuff like alternative magic theories. So dimensional magic is a great place to toss into the industrial age. Time magic, gravity magic, all of the critical role stuff that they came up with.
Well, that, and let's face it, time magic is Jules Verne's, right?
Right.
I mean,
The Time Machine.
yeah.
Journey to the Center of the World is another good example of that, right? So those thematics, those styles, you can throw dinosaurs back into this.
you always could.
You can always throw dinosaurs in. I mean, we're just dinosaur happy though. That's
Exactly. Ankylosaur Archfey, that's all I'm saying.
why. I hear you, man.
That's another piece of art I would love to see.
An Ankylosaur Archfey.
Yes.
I'd be down with that. We'd put it right up there.
All right. City-based magic would be super useful as well.
Now, the cities have been growing for a long time now in the various time periods, but this is really where most life is predominantly in the city. This is where you have like the London fog rolling through, Jack the Ripper type stuff.
Well, this is to an extent part of when cities become personified.
Ah, yes, the idea of a city, or like the city has a character.
Yes. New York, London. They're names, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's an image that comes with that is immediately graspable. And so at that point, you could also start thinking along the lines of, run that anthropomorphism game, right? What if the city is a patron?
And for that matter, it would be really awesome to have a warlock patron of a city. You imagine the New York warlock? Or like a London or Rome warlock? That'd be awesome.
And can you imagine how different those people would be?
Mm-hmm. Depending upon the city that you're at.
Yeah.
That would be very cool. Industrial magic is another thing that you can toss into the mix in this. So not just mass produced, but also magic of industry.
Yes. So we've discussed the fact that you've got steam engines and whatnot. Well, if you've got magic
engines,
certainly you throw a fire elemental into a circle of protection so that he can't get out, and you build a steam engine around him.
Well, now you have, again, going back to Eberron, the elemental galleons.
Sure.
With the big fire rings or air rings and such, or the land craft that they've formed, all that type of stuff you could do. Think of some other ways you can incorporate magic into this type of scenario.
Refrigerator.
Well, yeah. I mean, all you need is, what is it? The
brown mold.
Brown mold, man.
Yep.
You got brown mold refrigerator and earth elemental microwave.
Yeah. All those
fire
elemental. Yeah, I know what you meant.
It's fine. Additionally, dream magic is huge too, because we talk about society, right? Different ideas. There, at about this time, we didn't get too much into this, but you mentioned psychology and people's thoughts of mental repression, right? So Victorian
Sure.
age
Yeah.
is during this time at some point. So you maybe.
Yeah.
Again, we're not historians. It's going to be what I'm going to say.
Sure. No,
But-
that's fair.
Yeah. But you could have the concept of magic through dreams or dream interpretation. Lots of fun themes you could throw just from that.
Oh, neuromancy. That's the good stuff.
Yeah. And of course, mechanistics.
Yeah.
Play a Wild Wild West campaign? Hell yeah. I want to play a Wild Wild West campaign. I want to play that guy that's got, oh, look at that ship. And then the ship just, the robot legs just pop out of it and it just starts stomping along the ground and you're hitting everything with rapid fire artillery.
Yeah. Can you imagine a tugboat that turns into a locomotive?
Astro Train.
Just
So it's like an early version of the Transformer Astro Train.
Yeah.
But he's Tugboat Train.
yes.
That's what we're going to call it. Tugboat Train. So ridiculous. Let's talk about some monsters.
Sure. When I'm in this type of setting, city monsters are going to crop up a little more often. And now, once again, D&D, everything goes.
Everything goes.
Right.
But now we're focusing more on the population centers of the city. Now, we don't have to. You could play the divide between the farmland and the city, and that would be a fun way to play different here be monsters. But
And there's still frontiers out there.
oh yeah, still frontiers. But now the monsters are humans,
Sure.
straight up, because or they look like humans, they act like humans, and so that's a fun way to throw in city elements into the campaign. So the jungle now is the city. There are places in the city which are wilderness.
Sure.
So monsters of shadow, monsters of dreams, inhibitions like incubi and succubi would be totally
Really big right now.
Yeah, totally at home in this part. Any type of mechanical golems.
Yeah, that
I mean,
makes
the
perfect
concept
sense.
of the golem
Yeah.
came about this time anyway. But you could also have stuff like doppelgangers,
Yes.
mimics,
Changelings.
changelings, all those type of
Otyugs reaching tentacles up out of manhole covers and dragging
yeah.
people down.
yeah. You could throw some elithids in here too if you want, like anything from the far realm.
Were rats.
Were rats, yeah, the were creatures would be great. All of these things that you would think, even like goblins or gremlins or something like hiding in your cupboards, right?
All of it. Brownies. you can-
Boggins, yeah, whole 9 yards, man. So Fae can still exist, but now it's superstitious stuff. So we're away from the legendary creatures. Now the legends are in our heads, and the monsters exemplify the dreams and nightmares that we have. And of course, vampires.
Sure. You got to drop in that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde action
Oh, yeah,
occasionally.
yeah. So-
Some Jack the Ripper, clearly.
Clearly. Yeah. So a lot of different fun options that you can throw in just from a magic perspective. And again, when magic's around, what else is around? This is a cool time to have we mentioned Eberron, but I'm thinking Final Fantasy.
Warforged.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're thinking Deadlands. If you want to have a Wild West campaign, this is a perfect time to do it as well. We're thinking any type of World of Darkness.
this is a great, if it's something you want to look into, the whole mummy style campaign.
Sure.
You could absolutely do an undead jaunt into the desert.
Yeah. Or, hey, this is when the beginnings of Egyptology came about. So
That's what I was.
maybe Mummy wakes up, he looks around, he's in a damn museum, and he's pissed.
Oh, to bring it to you. Nice. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm with it.
Hey, I mean, imagine playing a party of mummies, and
Sure.
you wake up, and you're like, what the f-?
That would be a great evil campaign
Yes, it would.
because it's not your fault.
Yeah, you woke up, you're mad as hell. They're like, what is this?
Somebody. So what if? Okay, what if that's why you wake up? Right? Is because someone has exhumed you from your tomb with all of your riches. So it starts off in the afterlife. All of the stuff you use,
Mhm.
right? Because that's why you're buried with stuff. Is
Yeah.
So you've got stuff to use. Starts to disappear.
And you're looking around going, what's going on?
Hey, where'd my boat go? Hey, but then you feel a tug in your chest because somebody has stolen your canopic jars.
Oh, no.
And that's when you wake up in the museum.
You're encased in glass, and there's a ticket counter over there, and they're selling popcorn. And it's time to wreck stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Speaking of wrecking stuff, let's talk about politics.
Nice segue. That's solid. All right. At this point, politics exist on a global scale. Then it's not necessarily true globalism, but it's moving that direction.
We're
right?
moving to the geopolitical spectrum here.
Right. And it's always been there on some level or another, but here is when money and politics goes rampant and outrageous.
It's like peanut butter and jelly now, guys. It is the fat cats are running the show.
Yeah.
They're buying up people, lobbyists.
Yeah. They're either the people who can afford to run or the people who can afford to have the person they want
Yep.
run.
Now you've still got trade and all of the fun things like that. You could totally do pirates in this campaign.
Pirates still exist.
But now they've got airships. Airship pirates, guys. Think
Sure.
about it.
Little Abney Park action there. And for that matter, you could be playing an Abney Park game. They've got their own role-playing game.
Do they?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Why not? Let's talk about some themes.
All right. Imperialism.
Obviously, the first one, because countries are moving around, and we mentioned, dragging a mummy back from its tomb. There you go. Like, that happened. Imperialism happened.
Yep.
All the goods and bads, mostly bad.
Relic hunting. Let's face it, the only thing good imperialism honestly brought was food.
Okay. Fair enough.
Food.
And we'll leave it at
We
that.
gave some people some good food. We got some good food. That's it. Everything else was garbage.
You could even play the start of like an Indiana Jones style campaign or a Tomb Raider campaign in this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We mentioned Wild West.
Yeah.
I mean, and all of the various games that do Wild West stuff.
Sure. Now, you've got the Civil War going on at this point.
Yep, because everyone in the U.S., all this stuff's going on, and all of the horrible things that occurred with that as well. So you can talk about slavery. You could talk about
Manifest Destiny.
yeah, the Manifest Destiny stuff. We talk about immigration, the goods and bads of that. Overcoming the odds is a cool theme. I like that we mentioned that. And this can either apply to the stuff that's going on or just as a general theme for your characters to run into as well.
Sure. You can talk about the American dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Huge theme back then.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who came to America to find a better life for their families and what have you.
And there is a mythology behind just coming to America and immigrating.
Yeah.
And that is something you don't see a lot in any campaigns now that I'm aware of. It would be kind of a fun concept to explore.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be just the American dream. It could be any dream, really.
Sure.
Moving from one place to another is a cool concept to play a role-playing game with. I mean, it doesn't always have to be pirates and airships. It could be pirates, airships, and a new country.
Sure.
Or vampires. It could always be vampires.
I'm still with the Mummy campaign.
Of course you are. What else do we have?
Well, because of immigration and immigration, you've got the birth of cultural districts like, Chinatown, Little Italy, and all of those style places.
So now the city becomes part of the world in many ways.
Yeah.
Get a big enough city, you don't have to go to other parts of the world because the world is now there. And that's a cool way to play a campaign based entirely in one type of city. Now, there obviously are campaigns. Ravnica is a good example of that, where the whole damn world is a city, but
Sure.
maybe you're playing just in jolly old London, right? Well, they've got all these cultural districts, and you can go from place to place within the city. For a storyteller's perspective, that's great.
Also, with the advent of all of these tiny little pockets of places, that's a great place for if you're playing a darker style campaign. Different little horrors from different places.
Oh, yeah.
Little boogeymen and just, some Big Trouble in Little China type stuff,
Or
right?
American Gods
Yeah.
type stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. And also, we're thinking about going from the 1,000-foot view. Remember, we went from a tiny village to multiple villages to a nation to multiple nations to countries. Now we're looking at the whole world. We see a world map now, but here be dragons still. But not only that, now we've almost gone back to the village because here be dragons outside of our district in the city.
Sure.
So everything is now expanding like a fractal.
Because if you want to think about it, right, this is also the birth of things like Peaky Blinders, and
Mhm.
this is the time when you shrink it back down, you've got small groups protecting small groups or invading small groups again.
Yep.
And so, like you said, it's fractal. Yes, the bigger picture is expanding outward, but the smaller picture begins again.
Why would you want to play a campaign in the industrial age?
Well, airship pirates.
Airship pirates.
But beyond that, I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for the aesthetic. You begin to touch on things that you haven't been able to up to this point, really.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The whole mechanistics, the beginning of being able to be in a modern style game.
Psychological horror is another one. Play a Cthulhu campaign. Eldritch horror is great. Mysticism.
Sure. Occultism.
Yeah.
And, touching on all of the funness that you can have there. I mean, imagine running a D20 modern campaign where there's no other magic, but everybody in the party is a warlock of some type.
That'd be fun.
Because they found the books. They made the deals.
They said the words, the exact words.
Yes.
So there you have it. 3 more time periods for you to interject into your campaign, a bunch of different categories, themes, and whatnot. Did we miss something? Yes.
Certainly.
Of course we did. Write to us. info@goblinscorner.com, or you can reach me, Eric, at goblinscorner.com, or
me, Matt, at goblinscorner.com.
We're on all of the things. We're on Twitter,
Facebook,
Pinterest,
YouTube,
and Twitch.
And that's under Goblin's Corner.
We're also on Instagram.
At the Goblin's Corner.
Yeah, because we, as again, didn't snap it up in time. That's what happens sometimes. Do you like our show? Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player, YouTube, or Twitch.
Click the 5 stars. Give us a review on iTunes, Podchaser, and YouTube. Boost our show, and it feeds the ever-hungry algorithm.
With all tentacle horrors and whatnot that comes out of the algorithm. We've got one more of these, so next up we're going to go into the future.
The future.
And I can't wait.
It's in space.
Yeah, it's going to be some Star Trek or...
Well, we come to the present and then go to the future.
Yeah.
Nope, just future.
Well, we're
just
going to do
future.
the present, but we're worried about the future. That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good night.
The Goblin's Corner is written and produced by Eric Holden and Matt Staples.
The music is by the Mighty D20.
This has been a Subterranean production.